I think it would be a good idea if we now became instantaneously global because we brought these organizations together.
We're having to deal with this lack of maturity in certain areas because I'm always a bit paranoid about everything I share in the cloud with the LLMs. Hi everyone, Daniel Kube here from servicePath. And here's another edition of Executive Conversations. And today we're lucky enough to have one of my friends and one of my peers, Rob Cece. And Rob and I have known each other via our CEO peer group for a while. And Rob has been doing some really cool stuff in the AI world and, got started in the professional services world, but has really progressed in doing some really cool stuff. So Rob, I'd love to hear your background, how you got started, because you have a very tenured past in IT and, where you're going with the company. And I know you're doing multiple things and you have multiple BUs, but it'd be great to start off in your career, how you got started in IT and, what you learned along the way, who are some of your key influencers, and we'll go from there. And then hopefully we get to a point where we're talking, one of the things I really want to grab on in this conversation, because you are talking to so many organizations across North America and Europe about how they're transforming their executive teams to help them really think about how to embrace AI, but with a decision sort of rubric or matrix to make sure they're constantly revisiting those decisions to make sure they're staying abreast and on top of it. And, it's kind of a walking on the edge of an axe, right? Because if you move too fast, you don't get anything accomplished because you're constantly changing. But, what are you counseling your organizations and how are you arming them with the tools to get there? But let's go way back and start at the beginning and go from there.
Sure.
Does that sound?
Sure. No, awesome. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, having me on. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Oh gosh. So I've been in IT forever, obviously. And, where I started. So funny enough, the reason why I actually got to starting my own business was because at one point I was working in corporate life, and I had reached the pinnacle, what I believed was kind of the top of my profession. So I was CIO, CISO for a large company. The funny part was it was a very toxic environment. And so as much as I had reached the top, this is as far as I wanted to go for IT. CEO and own my own business wasn't even a thought necessarily. It was because of that catalyst that I was working for an organization that was toxic that made me decide, I think I need to try something different at this point. So it was actually, that was the reason, the catalyst that started me to say, okay, I'm going to go off on my own. I'm going to see what I can do, see what I can provide. So I started my own business, and the company was called Raspberry Lab. And I started it, and it was a services-oriented organization, always in software development. It's kind of always been where I've been at. And a lot of the cases, I was always looking for skill sets. So I reached out to this other organization across the pond and utilized a lot of his services, his companies. And after about a year and a half, it was about 2 years or so in, after utilizing his services. So I was really good at bringing the business in, connecting with individuals in the North American market, and he was really good at the execution side. We got to talking, and I said, hey, I think it would be a good idea if we actually amalgamated our businesses. You're great at execution, and I can do the sales side. Let's bring that together. And so, lo and behold, a marriage made in heaven, myself and my partner, Dimitri. He actually had a company called Soft House. I had Raspberry Lab, and so we decided to bring this all together under the Soft House brand because that was a better name than Raspberry Lab at the time. So I was like, you have a better name. And so basically we came together, and amalgamated our businesses. And what that did, two things happened there. Instantly, it gave us the ability to streamline our internal processes because we're no longer vendors and client and such. But more importantly, it actually gave us access to a global network of individuals from a customer acquisition perspective. So because he had already acquired customers in the European market and I was acquiring customers in the North American market, we now became instantaneously global because we brought these organizations together. And we've continued that model ever since. So I'm kind of managing the North American market, and he manages, let's call it the European Asian market. And now from an execution perspective, now we've become global in regards to our delivery to our clients and such. So that's kind of a little of how I started and kind of moved into where I am today. And I haven't looked back, and I've been doing this now for, I don't know. It's over 15 years plus, I think now it's been that I've done that. So yeah, it's been been quite a bit. I did have, I should take a step back. It wasn't as seamless as that. I did have a business in between that I did sell. I did have other partners in between that I did sell. That business didn't excite me as the software development and the whole space in between. And that was more focused on integrators. So I was an SAP consultant. We're doing a lot of work in that respect, but it just wasn't as exciting as software development. So that's kind of where I landed today.
Yeah, so you did a lot of nearshore and offshore to help do augmentation, but you pivoted where you became really more product centric and helping deliver products for organizations. And then you have kind of taken that orientation when AI came out. I think you were ChatGPT like 1.1 or something. You guys were playing with it like early, and you developed some cool products early on to help product managers. And now you continue to build is it a separate BU yet, the AI practice, or how is that morphing for you? Because I know the stuff you're doing is super cool. You still have your core business, but now you're doing this AI world, and you're also doing some productization. Can you talk about how that evolved and what was the epiphany that went off saying, oh my God, we got to do this?
I think a couple of things came to bear. I mean, it's not a secret that in a services-oriented organization, the cost is heavy on labor, right? And a lot of times as well, too, on a services-oriented service, you also are potentially more project-based and/or initiative-based versus an ongoing. So there was that thinking that first and foremost, we wanted to start moving our business into, and we did have a line of business whereby we did manage services, so we would be the outsource of organizations, but it's just never really, it can't be fully solidified because of the cost and the labor associated with it. So that was one of the light bulbs that went off. The other is really clearly identifying that we had a lot of knowledge, right? We had a lot of knowledge within our teams, because as we moved and grew our business into different segments and within different domains, first starting on the development side, then we moved into product management and so on and so forth. We recognized that we had a lot of experience because of our exposure to multiple clients. And so it gave us that ability to say, hey, why don't we take some of that and see if we can productize some of this information. Where we are today is the AI practice is on its journey to be eventually separated out from our core business. It is separate within our industry. So it is within the Softhouse group is our larger entity, and that's got everything under there. Although we do have a subsidiary right now, which is the Softhouse Advisory. That's kind of the business that's the AI practice. And so we're now slowly paring that off so that organization and that business is just strictly focused on the AI practice. And that's more just from a logistics perspective than it is from a delivery, because we've already separated out from a delivery perspective, a dedicated team, dedicated focus, they're a dedicated business. And they marry each other nicely, because we've been doing AI even before ChatGPT. I mean, the LLMs have been around forever, right? This is where people say, hey, AI is new. Well, generative AI is new, really, but LLMs and AI in general have been around for a long time. And so we've been doing that. So we've kind of been taken away from some of our existing business and really kind of bolstering and supporting our new AI practice and helping out organizations, really jump on board and really get the value out of AI where it is today versus where it was yesterday.
And you were early in launching some pretty cool products that you did for free. Like I remember we were using Prodia, was one of the things that you guys created that helped product managers, create their product roadmaps and things like that. Are you still going down that path or evolving that tech? Like and what other things are you beginning to launch? Or maybe don't share the secret sauce, but what are you most excited about?
Yeah, no, definitely Prodia is still there. I mean, as you know,
give a bit of a commercial about Prodia, just people know what it is.
So Prodia is your AI companion relevant to product managers, helping doing the ideation right into the storyboarding and all the rest that come from it. So it's kind of a complete end-to-end workflow specifically for product managers. And we recognize that was an area that very administrative heavy, and that's where whatever AI today is fantastic at doing and alleviating is really taking that low level administrative work and kind of eliminating it. And so that's what Prodia does today. And so what we're also finding and what we're working on, and nothing yet that I can announce, but I can say we're definitely going to be announcing, in the next probably mid this year. We've got there are a lot of consistent processes within organizations today. Like I'll give you, some insights in regards to anonymization as an example, right? You want to utilize, everybody wants to utilize these LLMs. They want to utilize the capabilities of these public public systems and such. But on the flip side, they also want the privacy. So to be able to capitalize on that information going back and forth, there's a lot of anonymization. There's a lot of information that needs to be done, a lot of processes that need to be governed and such. And so that process alone is where we've done a lot of work, and we've implemented into existing clients. We just haven't productized it in the sense of that we haven't published it yet. So we're in the process of we'll call it pilot phasing into our existing clients today, which has been successful. And so now we're going to be in the process where we're going to productize it and launch it hopefully in the next quarter, let's call it. So but a lot of that is being done. So we're productizing what we're learning because we recognize that AI awareness and understanding of AI, there's a window. People don't know about AI, what its true capacity and capability are. There's only individuals like your company and such that really have jumped on board and become AI first and really understand its capabilities. Not many of these organizations are so far along. And so we understand that window of opportunity for us to help and create awareness is going to be a short. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years, not really sure necessarily how it is. So what's going to eventually come from that are the capabilities where people are going to want the products, the solutions, the off-the-shelf products that are going to solve that, even though they recognize that you can build it yourself, but that comes with a whole bunch of baggage, even though it's easy to build using vibe coding, even though, you can get somebody to do it immediately. There's a lot of heavy components that are baked in. And that's the reason why we're kind of continuing to productize what we're learning as we go along.
Yeah, I think, one of the things, like, as you know, my day job is running this company and, still probably wearing too many hats. But it's interesting as executives because we're sort of in the Wild West phase, I would almost argue, with AI still, very much so. Yeah. And, a really good manifestation of that is, so I shared with you earlier, we use Drata for our policies, for our SOC 2 and our compliance solutions. And, as an executive owner, you own different policies, and so as CEO, I own a bunch of policies, and I was going through them, and normally Drata and Avanta, I guess, is the other big player. They have templates when you're going through and suggesting changes. And these templates in these tools have not addressed concepts like shadow IT in their policies, or, thinking about reverse engineering or new policy onboarding for guys, and also making sure these things are locked down. So it was really weird. I was using LLMs to basically nuance these new changes into these new tools that you would think would come out of the box. So as executives, we're having to deal with this lack of maturity in certain areas to make sure we address these challenges and risks from a governance perspective. But, in 2 years, all that stuff will be baked into all these tools. It will be normalized. And so you won't need the ability to think about those new changes. However, one of the things that I think I'd love to get your perspective on is, as an executive, like we probably have some AI sprawl. So we have a lot of licenses for different tools, and they're very good at different things. I think I mentioned, we use ChatGPT, we use Gemini, we use GenSpark, I forget that. In marketing, there's a whole bunch of tools, and in Atlassian, we're using Rovo. So there's this huge sprawl of things that we're licensing, and we're finding ways to almost daisy chain these together for some really great outcomes. However, as an executive, once you get really comfortable with a tool, generally speaking, you kind of stay with it. But there's the need to be constantly curious now, especially as that rate of change happens. But then you're kind of also challenged. Well, if you're constantly looking for the next solution, you're not getting any work done, right? So how do we counsel our teams and lead our organizations to say, okay, let's put a stick in the sand and have a revisit policy to think about this? Because literally things are changing daily now, right? It's
Yeah.
almost impossible. Like the more stuff I watch and learn, the less I absolutely know.
Yeah.
But how do we arm ourselves for that inevitability? I mean, and I know you are helping a lot of organizations globally beginning to try to embrace some of this stuff, but I'd love to get some of your thoughts around that.
Sure. I'd love to give you the simple answer, because I wish I had that simple answer. And the answer is
It's 42 from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly what the answer is. It's 42, right? It's like anything else. You got to give the ability you got to segment out your time and your effort. The value is driven. So like 80-20, right? So 80% of the time, spend it on, your BAU, your business as usual, continuing on with the product in which you have and moving forward. And maybe 20% of the time on innovation, right? Because it's not going to go away, because there is no tool yet has won, and they're not going to win. And especially now with the agentic models coming out, this is going to eliminate a lot of the innovation or the need for us to innovate, because it's going to be baked within tools that are using ChatGPT and all that stuff. And you're going to start to move away potentially from some of these groundbreaking tools, because it'll be like, well, this agent is going to do everything for me, or you're going to build your own agent. And then at some point, so as long as it's all about value, is the fundamentals, right? Are you getting value from it? Are you continuing to drive value within your organization? So I don't think that's going to go away. I think there is going to be a time. So you have to put in place the ability to be curious, but ensure it doesn't interfere with your day-to-day opportunities. You talk about sprawl, and I'd mentioned this earlier too. It's interesting because when we originally started this practice, it was all about awareness. What can AI do? And we've gotten to organizations, both here in North America and within the European region, in various sectors, from finance to manufacturing to logistics, you name it, from a client perspective. And it was, tell me what we can do. And like most organizations, there's a hesitation. So immediately it's like, well, go talk to this individual over here. And before you know it, we're talking to, for example, let's see, the CRO, the chief revenue officer within an organization. He's saying, hey, I want to do so much work for my sales team. I want you to help with the process flow. I want you to eliminate administration. And at the same time, we've got other departments that are not part of this conversation starting to invest and starting to look at AI, because they've heard through the grapevine, they've seen in some of the potential demos, and they start building systems on their own, because as you know, it's very easy to potentially build AI demos really well, right? Like we all know that. The production, different story.
Yeah, real time.
Right?
I mean, I think it's shaking up. Like one of my heroes, and I'm dating myself, is Clayton Christensen. I don't know if you ever read any of his books, but Innovator Solution. And he was all about like innovation from below and how industries mature, and the dominant vendors in the space just get so focused on unit economics, and they become so immovable that they're brittle and they begin to break and get attacked from organizations below. And his perfect example in the case was the mini mill in the U.S. steel industry that, it was a Harvard constant reference in business school. The thing with AI is I actually think, and I would love, unfortunately he's no longer here, to get his perspective, because in a lot of ways with AI, it now enables innovation from above.
Yes.
So a lot of organizations who have big markets and big customers focus on these big mega organizations, but now they have so much IP. And the problem was it was so hard to create a nimble product for the markets below them. That has changed.
Yes.
Right? So all of that IP now can be rolled out to create solutions for the markets below these big behemoths. As much as an opportunity for the organizations below to attack the big, it's an opportunity for the big to go after the markets below them. And I'm not sure yet how to quite play that, and it just comes back to that renewal scenario, right? Before it was, because once you get a legacy code base and you have technical debt, that used to be the albatross, right? That used to be the anchor. Technical debt can be now abstracted away very quickly leveraging AI. But it does play into I think you and I are talking about one of the challenges, and it's a matter of time. We don't know what that timeline is, but AI hallucination and AI mirages, especially with big compute and big data sets, is still really problematic. And boards and big companies, when I sit on boards, I would be very worried to be having my pricing and heavy duty configuration being done by AI without any checks and balances, and deterministic code is still way faster and better, and the ability to audit. But when that changes, and it all goes back to this mindset, how do we begin to think about, because what we were taught in business school has now changed. changed because you can take that big data set as you, Mr. Big Company, and apply that and create some really cool solutions very quickly now. And then conjunction, like constant change of, the elevator speed is just going insane. Yeah. Anyways, you do have this offering. You come out and help organizations with this rubric, right? Is it?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we have quite a few offerings in that space, but where we start and where we find the biggest success from organizations is at the executive workshop. And, and that ranges depending on what clients are looking for, but it can be a one-day exercise that goes into, a multi-week exercise. And it's really starting that seed to really understand what are the capabilities, what are the pitfalls, what are the risks associated with it, and creating, this mindset of, well, there's all this innovation and this capability that you can design and you can go crazy, but you got to put a bit of governance on it. And that's one area that we've actually, really solidified within their organizations is really kind of how do you put that framework in place to ensure that you are not running wild, you're not creating all this shadow IT, you're not going off and creating whatever you want. And so we found most organizations that take that workshop, that initiation, that's been the greatest success. And I've done it the other way, whereby, I've had organizations where they originally started and say, hey, start at the bottom and go up because I got this idea down below. And I got to be honest with you, that's usually not a successful engagement for us and not a successful engagement from organizations because you're already starting with the end in mind versus we're giving it the opportunity to start with, here's this great opportunity, this great system thinking, tool. Now let's embed that within the system and see how we can rejig it from the beginning versus kind of going backwards. And we're finding that that's the greatest success for organizations, right? Is really working at the executive level down, right? So
yeah. So just taking it back into early in your career. So, you started off as CIO. Well, you didn't start off were you a developer when you got started? How did you get started?
Yeah. So I started off as a developer. So I went to business school like everyone else, BCom and Bachelor of Commerce, well, a couple of degrees, but one Bachelor of Commerce, specialization in computers, is in computer science. And I started as a developer. I rode the wave, I date myself here, rode the wave of, the internet boom, right? And I was a developer during that period of time. And I really saw the opportunity for, that's really where SaaS products and all the rest kind of started from, right? And all that. And then from that, it was a corporate career for quite some time, but always in technology. Moving from the technical, I knew I was better at managing ideas and solutions and people than I was necessarily at being the best developer. All right. As much as I love to develop, and I get, now with vibe coding, since I haven't put fingers to keyboard and coded in a long time with vibe coding now, I feel like I'm young again and actually coding, right? Because I've got that basis that I understand code. I can read it. When it doesn't matter what language it is, once you get that, you can always kind of understand the concept of what's actually happening. But now with vibe coding, it's like, oh, thank God, right? But it's no vibe coding and coding today in AI is almost very similar to how I used to code, where we used to go to, what's it called? I think it was like Stack Overflow or something like that. We used to grab the code and copy it and then change it up and all that good stuff. So, so that's kind of my background's always been technology, and AI is just the natural evolution into it.
So who, like in your career, I always love to ask, like, who was one of the big people that had a big impact, or mentor, or someone who gave you the drive or the vision not to settle?
That's a good question. So I'd love to say things like, the Bill Gates and the Elon Musks and all that kind of stuff. And I know, and now Elon will probably, it used to be when you said Elon, people were like, oh, wow. Now it's like, oh, geez, right? All right. So it could be up and down. We're not sure. But I love what Elon does. I think what he's doing with SpaceX and all the rest, I think is phenomenal. But in the end, it was my father, to be honest with you. And the reason being is because, I'm a first generation Canadian. My parents are immigrants from Italy. And so my father came here at the age of 16 with nothing. And he did kind of what I did, although he was not in technology. He was in millwork. So he used to make kitchens, cabinets, that kind of stuff. and a blue collar worker. And the guy worked for other organizations, just like I worked in corporate. And he got to the point where he's like, I can do it better if I build my own business. And so he was, he's my idol in that respect because he was an entrepreneur. And that's where my drive came from. And in fact, we have conversations today, about business, even though two separate businesses, different focus, different clients, but his thinking about how to serve a client and the need to serve clients and all that stuff it's synonymous in all organizations. And so he's the guy I look up to because he was the one that kind of gave me that drive as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, you better put a plug in for your mom, otherwise you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. Well, behind every strong man, there's a woman. 100%. Not going to say. Let's be honest. My mother wore the pants in our family, so so my mom was my dad's accountant. So I have to give my mom my accounting skill sets as my own business because she's the one who started me off. So absolutely, no question about it.
And you have kids, and what are you telling them?
Yeah, so I've got two kids. I've got a daughter, 19, who's in university now, and a son who just started high school. And it's a good question. It's twofold. First is, like any good parent, I try to tell them follow what interests you the most. That AI or no AI. I tell them to follow what interests you the most because you'll be most successful in what you're interested in. Recognize. And I always have the caveat, if you like the life you lead, just remember what you need to do to get that life, right? So you can't necessarily have a low-level job. And, my son and I bought dirt bikes this summer, right? You're not going to have dirt bikes at the cottage if you are doing a low-level job. You're not going to be able to afford it. So if you like the life you lead, just remember you need to get to that point. Now, get into a position in which you focus on what you like doing. When it comes to AI, that's interesting. The only thing I really tell them is make sure to utilize AI in your everyday activities. Reasonably, ethically. Like I'm not telling my son that's in high school to cheat. And create his exam papers using AI. I said, but it's okay to utilize AI as a starting point, but just always have that review. That human in the loop kind of approach when it comes to always validating it. I'm trying to get them to really understand it because I've got my daughter who's sitting here and she's thinking about becoming a lawyer, and my wife is a lawyer. And so I'm showing her how my wife's work day to day is changing utilizing AI. And I'm saying, well, you should understand that because it's not that lawyers are going to go away, but you should understand how or what's going to change as you move forward. And if you're familiar with it, you'll be more comfortable with it when you actually get to that point.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the one thing I'm telling my kids, and it's actually interesting, I'm telling a lot of my friends as well, is, you have the opportunity to think really big now. Because this whole concept, like stuff that we used to think would be impossible, like when you think about when we first started, to do a startup was hard because it was really expensive because you actually had to get servers in your building, and then cloud came, and then it became really cheap compute. And now the ability, you don't need an army of developers, right? If you look at that BMAD method, like all these new harness approaches to using agents to create teams.
Yes.
And, I'm telling my son, just go try building some stuff and just start having some discussions because it's evolving so quickly. But I also tell my friends, who are been in their careers for a long time, I don't know what to do next. And I go, well, you could do nothing or you got lots of money, but, here's your opportunity to try to do those projects that you never thought you could do.
That's right.
Yeah, be it for profit or be it for good or whatever you want to do, but it's very exciting. I mean, when I think about the ability, and a great example of that, I'm just calling a shout out one of our common friends, Paul Goldman. He has basically been creating, based on his core business, but building this governance model for pharma, and he just got accepted into the NVIDIA startup program. And I mean, it's just immense. Shout out to Paul, great work and really exciting for the company he's created. But yeah,
that's amazing. And that's exactly it, right? From the initiation until delivery. I mean, it's just like the window has gone down exponentially, right, in regards to it. So you're absolutely right. And I think, organizations, just like kids, to your point, just go out and build. You don't know what's going to come out, and you'll familiarize yourself. And that's what will be the catalyst to something next, right? That'll get you to something bigger. So,
And any predictions on, do you see a multi-model approach in perpetuity, or is someone going to win, or is it just going to be niche specializations? What are you guys seing, or what are you thinking?
It's a good question. I'd like to say I'm investing in certain areas, but no magic ball there. I think there's going to be some winners. I think foundationally there's going to be some winners, but I think I think that's yet to be seen who those are. I think there are definitely some leaders in that space, but I think in the end, I think it's going to be special. It's going to be specialization of knowledge. I think that's going to be key, right? I mean, at the end, you just can't, a system that's purpose built and it has the knowledge and capabilities around it in all forms of AI, irrelevant of the foundational type systems, but I think is going to be the winners in regards to it. And I think there's going to be a culling. I mean, there's going to be a lot of systems, a lot of businesses that are going to go away, and a lot of systems are going to get amalgamated. Companies are going to get bought. No different than the days of the internet boom, right? Everybody built everything. It's literally mapping it, right? It's exactly what happened. It was a great opportunity. Everybody built a whole bunch of stuff, and then eventually people start to recognize where is the true value. Those that didn't drive value, well, they're gone. Those that were big enough would buy those that could bring greater value, and off we went, right? So I think that's
one of my interesting observations there, because as mentioned, we use lots of different LLMs, and I shared with you before, is we use the Atlassian stack, and Rovo they have an embedded LLM. And the interesting thing that I found about using that is because it's contextualized only to our data, like all our PRDs, all our products, all our tickets, all our institutional knowledge, because we use Confluence and stuff. The results and insights that we're getting from that is so amazing. And the other layer why it's really interesting for me and so impactful is because I know the BS filter really quickly because it's all our data.
Yeah.
The problem is when you have an outbound LLM doing some of this amassing, you have no sense of your validation layer is way thinner because you don't know the data where they're referencing everything. So I was actually blown away. So I think, in the construct of leveraging these tools, I really see some really high value by having an embedded LLM in your organization. But that takes me to the next question of, what are you telling your customers about creating their own sort of instance with an open source versus using one of the cloud models? Like, where do you think that's going to go? Because I see, high value there, but then it means maintaining an instance and all that kind of stuff, but also less risk, because I'm always a bit paranoid about everything I share in the cloud with the LLMs, even though I do not have the do not train settings and we have the commercial version, so on and so forth. Like, what are you guys counseling organizations on? The
exact same. Really depending on the purpose and what you're trying to achieve. Obviously, data. What's the purpose of the data, and is it proprietary and such? But we're definitely doing the same. It's a combination of the two. And so, what we're trying to do is having the proprietary or the in-house LLMs and such that they're managing, and all the data stored there, and then utilizing anonymizing it and bringing it off into the public cloud to use the power of these foundational LLMs to give you that capability to move it forward. But I don't think that's going to go away. I think that's actually going to grow. I think people are going to utilize that more and more, especially since we're still on the verge of understanding of, the privacy of information. How is information actually being utilized? I mean, I do appreciate that these foundational systems, they do have, terms and conditions and such, and they say we don't use it a lot. We don't narrow down your data to you and all that good stuff. No different than, say Google will do the same. It's all about consolidation of information so we can provide you. But in the end, your data is out there, and in a lot of cases, you don't want that to happen. So we are counseling our clients to do the same, to really keep that information in-house, but it also adds that value add. That's your IP. That's what's actually driving. This is why your system, your product has value, is because it's not out there and it's not being, lack of a better term, bastardized and becoming this kind of, all encompassing type system. It's actually, it's got the thought behind it and the validations and such that go around it. So
yeah, great. I mean, and it's just constantly evolving. But anyways, this has been awesome. This is, if someone was interested in taking you up or reaching out to you, how can they reach you in your organization, and maybe talk about like some ways you can help some organizations potentially navigate some of these questions?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'm always open to a chat. You can either ping me on LinkedIn, and it's Robert Sestito, obviously, or you can hit me up on email. So it's robert.sestito@shsadvisory.com. That's shsadvisory.com.
I will put it in the body. That's awesome.
And always open to a conversation. And I think it's always interesting to see what other organizations are thinking. So I'm always open to having some sort of understanding of where people are at and letting them know.
And just in closing, who are the couple of guys that we know you follow, Elon? But who are some of the other thought leaders you're sort of following what they're doing pretty closely?
Well, I think like anybody, I'm following the hardware guys. I like to see what NVIDIA and stuff are doing in regards to that. But really, honestly, Elon, I like to follow. He's my big guy. I do. I just love the fact because he's not a one trick pony, right? Like, I mean, the guy's basically right across the board. He's created this manifest of various companies,
self-perpetuating, reinforcing organizations. Yeah, it's really cool.
You got to give it to the man, right? You got to give it to the man. So I love what he's done. Yeah.
Awesome.